pricing itself, and how you can make pricing profitable for you, because too many people have a hang up and have an issue and a problem all around the whole idea of pricing their service. And recently in the toolbox, there has been a number of different comments about, what people are charging, and should I have, is my minimum charge my hourly rate, and so on and so forth. So what I want to do is have a conversation around that subject to give you an idea of where you should be at when you're thinking about your pricing, and what you should be thinking about. And of course, one of the very first things that you have to do is ask yourself the question, and it's the real question, guys, who sets the pricing in your business? We, as an industry, know that in most cases, and I'm not saying that they're all bad or anything, but in most cases, if you're working with a building contractor, if you're working with even letting agents or estate agents, they will often try to dictate to you what they will accept as a charge. So they'll tell you, we only pay. And my advice to you guys is, when you hear something like that, we only pay, or we only expect to pay, just run a mile. Just get away, because at the end of the day, you are responsible for setting the prices in your business, nobody else, and nobody else should dictate the price that you charge. So when you go to see a building contractor, and they're saying, and this happens, right? So they say to you, do a quote for this, give us your best possible price, blah, 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 blah. And by the way, I've got loads of work in the pipeline. Right? How many times have we all heard that? Let me see some comments, or some thumbs, smiley faces. Just something to indicate that you've heard this before, because we've all heard it at some point. I've got loads of work in the pipeline, mate. Give me your best possible price, yeah? And then you go back and you give the quote, and they come back and say, is that really the best you can do? Because I'm used to paying, and they'll give you whatever a day rate or an hourly rate or whatever. And they're expecting you to run with that. And then quite often, out of a sense of lack, let's be honest about it, out of a sense of scarcity, out of a sense of fear, we capitulate, we give in, and we go, oh yeah, okay, well, I'll meet that price, I'll work for that. And that's other people then dictating to you what you should be charging, dictating your pricing. And that's not a good way to do business, because when you operate like that, quite often, as I say, it comes from a place of fear, it comes from a place of scarcity. But quite often, you've never fully worked out what you need to be earning. Forget about what you want to be earning, but what you need to be earning in order to just break even. And many of these people, as you know, and some of you have probably been caught in it. And I'm not proud enough to say that I've never been caught. I have been caught, guys. Like many people in the early stages of my business. Yes, I had been caught with this kind of situation, where hungry for the work, thinking that nothing else was going to come in, you go, yeah, okay, I'll do it for that. And then you start resenting it, and then you start realizing, shit, I'm not even covering my rate. But now you're committed. Now you're in there. And you're struggling because you're putting fuel in the car. You're buying all the bits and pieces that you need. I'm not just talking about materials, but all the other little ancillary bits and pieces that you need. You're trying to keep your family. You're trying to keep yourself on the go. And you start resenting the fact that you decided to do it at that price. And you start resenting the fact that you're doing it for that fee. But here's what happens. Somebody else comes along with another job. And you think, shit, I better get it in the diary, because when this one runs out, I need to be earning more money again. And then you'll do the same freaking thing again over and over and over again. And that's why it's so important that, at each stage of your business, and as your business grows, things will change. You set your price. Unfortunately, some people set their price once and forget about it, and they're charging the same fee for like years to come. But you've got to monitor this continuously. You've got to look at where your business is at, where your expenses are at, what it is you want to earn in terms of profit, and revisit this on a regular basis. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you're going to increase your prices on a regular basis, but what you've got to do is be aware of where you are in terms of, if I start out today in business, and I'm going to just pull some silly examples, but if I start out today in business and I'm charging, let's say, as we find with most people who come along, £25 an hour, right? and I go through and I work out my calculations, which you're encouraged to do. And I work out my calculations and I discover, well, actually £25 an hour doesn't even, it doesn't even cover my, when I have my memberships to the NIC or my Wix Trusted Trader, or any of the, buying my tools, keeping my van up, food that I need on a day-to-day basis. Forget about salary and wages and stuff for the house, but food that I have when I'm out working. All the other bits and pieces that are involved in actually running the business, of having a business. And I find that doesn't work. So I run through the calculation and I decide, okay, so I need to up it to 30 just to cover myself. I said I was pulling figures out of the year. Yeah. Well, I could settle into charging that 30 and never look at it again and carry on charging 30. But as time goes on and the price of diesel goes up, or they're going to ban diesel cars, the price of petrol goes up, or charging an electric vehicle goes up, insurances increase, the cost of the tools that I'm buying increases, the cost of the uniforms that I'm wearing increases, but I'm still charging £30 an hour. How crazy is that? Because when I go back to redo my calculation, I can discover that I'm back where I was when I was charging 25. I'm not even covering my arse. So you need to revisit your pricing at various stages in your business. And I suggest in most cases, particularly in the early stages of your business, you should be revisiting your pricing every 3 months. And like I said, it doesn't mean you got to put it up, but it certainly means that you're keeping an eye on it and you're running through the calculation again. You're looking at all the outgoings in your business, and you're looking at how much you want to earn, and you're looking at the pricing levels that you are that you need to be charging, that your customers are happy charging, and you're pushing that ceiling all the way along. So bottom line on this one, guys, is you are responsible for the pricing in your business, and don't ever let anybody dictate to you what they expect you to charge, or what they expect to pay you. When somebody does that, walk away. Just you don't need it. There is enough business out there. This whole idea of the scarcity mindset is only because, and here's a kick in the arse for you, the whole idea of a scarcity mindset is only because you're not freaking marketing properly. Because the bottom line is, if I've proved this time and time again, if you do follow the 6 steps that we teach in the toolbox, you will create a flow of work into your business. That's a given. As far as I'm concerned, I've got 1,000% confidence in that. If you follow the steps within a 15 to 20 mile radius of where you actually operate, you will generate work. So there's no scarcity of work at all. So if you get rid of that mindset and you realize that, okay, I might be quiet for a day or two, but I can build a better business by sticking to my guns, by me controlling my pricing and not giving in because I think my diary is going to stay empty forever. That period of time when it is empty, I can use that to market my business. That type of time, that period when things are quiet, I can use that to develop my marketing strategy to make sure that going forward, my diary is continually filled and I am charging the right kind of money. Instead of thinking I need to fill the diary because if I don't fill the diary, I'm not earning any money. A hiatus for a short period of time, a step back for a short period of time so that you can actually move forward, you can catapult forward, is sometimes a really good strategy. Okay, so take control of it. You and you alone are in charge of and control the pricing of your business. Not even me. I can't say to you, oh, you should charge this or you should charge that. I will always tell you, increase your prices. I will always tell you, revisit your prices and go back to it. But I'll never say to you, you should be charging, because I don't know your outgoings. I don't know your lifestyle. I don't know what kind of profit margin you want or what your future plans are. And all of these things have to be taken into consideration when you are looking at setting your pricing. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Let me see some thumbs, hearts, and smiley faces if that does. I know it's a bit early in the morning for the high energy, but hey ho, let's see some of those thumbs, hearts, and smiley faces. I saw some comments going in there, so bear with me 1 second. Kevin Doy, if you are doing a challenge on Mac, you need to use Firefox or Chrome, as Safari doesn't work properly on Ads Manager. Good piece of advice, mate. What you might want to do, Kevin, is when you get into the challenge group, which will open up on Friday/Saturday, you may want to just post that in there as well, so that it advises, because there's going to be a lot of people who are not in the toolbox in this challenge, and you may want to just give them that little tip as well. So yeah, go for it, my friend. Well done. So Scott's saying he hears that phrase lots of times. Yeah, I mean, we get it all the time from builders, letting agents, estate agents, landlords. You know, oh, what I'm expecting to pay is, or I'm used to paying this. Abala's heard it so many times he doesn't care. Yeah, good. And that's the attitude. You don't need to care. You don't need to look at it and think, oh, I'm going to lose that job. If I don't meet his price, I'm going to lose that job. You know what? If you lose it, you're meant to lose it, and you're better off away from it. You're better off not doing the work than taking less than you are worth. Because, you know, we talk all about positioning in the toolbox, and you can deposition yourself as well. In fact, we're going to talk about that well, over the course of the next slide as well. So let's have a look. Next, there is a difference between overpricing and underpricing. You have got to get the balance. You've got to get the balance right. You know, again, I will always encourage you to push the boundaries as far as your pricing is concerned. And those of you who've been around the toolbox for a long time will have heard me talk about resistance. And when you meet resistance, okay, when you hit resistance, that is when you actually realize that you are overpricing. Now, again, depending on who your ideal customer is, depending on how well you have positioned your business, these are factors that will determine what overpricing or underpricing is. Hopefully this is making sense. Because again, you know, your ideal customer will be completely different to, say, I don't want to start picking names, but somebody else's, another member's ideal customer. How good a job or how poor a job you have done in terms of positioning yourself, or how early in the stages of you positioning yourself compared to somebody else, is also going to be a factor in it. So the fact that one person can come along to a demographic or an audience and charge them a minimum charge, let's say of, and again, I'm just picking arbitrary figures, guys, so don't nail down on figures here. Look at the concept behind it, okay? But let's say one person can charge £95 as a minimum charge, or an hourly rate, and they don't really hit any resistance with that. Everybody that they go to is happy and goes, yeah, okay, £95 is absolutely fine. That's one person. But over here on the other side, you've got a person who's charging, let's say, £45 as a minimum charge and £45 in an hour. But every time that they charge £45 for a minimum charge, or as their hourly rate, they're getting objections. They've got people saying to them that, oh, that's a little bit steep, that's too much. Again, you've heard comments like this, and my guess is here that even many of you now who are working on increasing your prices, as I sort of coach you through and talk you through this, you will have discovered that there are times during your development where you've met that resistance. You've met people going, oh, that's a bit steep, that's too much. And the resistance, what we call the resistance, is when the number of people who complain or say no is more than the number of people who say yes. Okay, and like, you know, in most cases, what I'm saying is, and again, it's arbitrary, but what I'm saying is, normally, if you're winning 7 out of 10 of the jobs that you are pricing, and 7 out of 10 people are not objecting to the pricing, then you're in the right ballpark. You don't need 10 out of 10, okay? But you will always meet resistance. But let's go back to the reason why this happens, why one can charge 95 and not meet any resistance, and the other can charge 45 and hit a pile of resistance, a whole pile of resistance. You know, but you should never measure yourself against another person in that way. And this is why, you know, this crap of going down the wholesalers and saying, well, what are you charging for that? And then going back and doctoring and adapting your prices for that. This is one of the reasons why many freaking electricians or tradesmen in general fail. Why? Because the guy who's charging a 95 has a couple of things going for him, but we're going to look at just 2 for this. Number one, he will have selected, whether accidentally or intentionally, he will have selected the right kind of customer for that. In other words, he's mapped out who his ideal customer is for him to actually be allowed or be able to charge that rate. So, you know, when people at the customers at the £45 level or the £25 level, he doesn't want them. He doesn't target them. He doesn't go after them. So therefore, he's not meeting resistance because the people that he's looking at are happy to pay for value. We'll talk about that in a little while as well. That's number one. Number two, the guy over here, not only maybe has he chosen perhaps the wrong ideal customer, or he hasn't mapped out the customer who will pay him the increase that he wants. And this will change. Your ideal customer will change again. Often you've heard me talk about revisiting and adapting as you get more information about the demographics and the people that you're working for. So you need to constantly look at your audience. You need to make sure that your ideal customer is after the value that you're providing, not the rate. And that's one of the differences. That's one of the differences why. The other one is positioning. This guy over here charging the 95 has positioned himself as being worth 95. Now, whether that again was intentional or accidental, and some people are doing this accidentally and don't even realize what they're doing. But this is what the whole toolbox is about. It's about waking you up to the fact that you can control this. You know, if you see somebody going and they're able to charge 95, 100, 125, 145, it's not only is it that they've chosen the right kind of audience, the right kind of demographic for their customer, the right kind of ideal customer is what we're talking about, but they've also done what is necessary to position themselves to be worth that, to be of that value to their customer. And these are people who will have either being active in the community, so people know who they are, they accept who they are because they're either out networking or meeting or talking to people. They will have YouTube channels so people can actually get to know who they are, so that they appreciate the work that goes on behind the work. They will have blog posts going out. They will have a Facebook presence. When they're dealing with customers, nothing will ever be too much. They will be providing their customers with information, so when their customers go away from them, that the customers have a great feeling about it. And when they have a great feeling about it, they will actually talk to other people as well. So all of these things have to come into play in order for you to be able to get your price to the right level. And that's why, again, new to the toolbox, we will encourage you to increase your pricing, and we'll get you to do it incrementally until you hit what we call the resistance. The resistance is when you start to lose the jobs and people start to say no. Not one person, but the majority of people start to say no. So if you're getting 7 out of 10, if you even go down as far as 6 out of 10, I would be happy, because at that point, you don't just stop at that and go, oh, I'm happy winning 6 out of 10. No, you increase your positioning. You work on your positioning. You revisit your ideal customer. You look to start targeting different people at a different level. These are all changes and alterations that need to be made as you go along. And again, look at some of the guys who have succeeded at doing this in the toolbox, and examine the steps that they have done along the way. And I will tell you to a man that they have done exactly that. They've hit the barrier, they've hit the ceiling, they've stopped, they've gone, right, I'm okay here for a while. But they didn't sit back comfortably and go, that's it. £55 is as much as I can charge as a minimum charge. They didn't do that. What they did was they went back to the drawing board and they start working on their positioning. They start working on identifying their ideal customer. Then they push the barrier again and they go from 55 up to 60. They go, all right, so not much resistance there. 60 up to 65, not much resistance there. 65 up to 70. I'm hitting resistance again. Right, what do I need to do? Back to the drawing board. I'll start working on my positioning some more, because now I'm targeting a person at a different level. And that's how you've got to do it. Okay, so that's in terms of underpricing, overpricing. But a couple of things that you need to be aware of. If you overprice, so in other words, if you haven't put those steps in place, if you haven't been, bouncing off the ceiling and checking to see where you are, and you're one of these guys who comes in and goes, oh, everybody's putting their prices up. I'm going to go from £25 as a minimum charge, £25 an hour, and I'm just going to jump up to 70 quid. Okay, you can start driving your existing customers away, and then it's difficult then to start rebuilding. And that's why you need to do it incrementally and sort of, as I said, bounce off of that ceiling. You've got to do it £5, £10 a pop and see what the The difference is, now I know that there are some of you that I've worked with from time to time who've been charging ridiculously low prices, and I just know as a gut feeling that you can put it up quite quickly, and I've advised you to do so, and it has worked in many cases. I think there's probably one case where I've advised it and it didn't, and we needed to climb back down a bit. So, I'm not saying that you've got to do it incrementally all of the time. There are exceptions. However, my advice would be you do it incrementally before you start putting people off, because if you overprice, you will send customers away. And the way you will overprice is, number one, if you're charging the audience, I'm calling them audience, the potential customers, your ideal customer. If you've mapped out who your ideal customer is, and you know at that stage that their ceiling, their limit is, let's say, £45 as a minimum charge of £45 an hour, and they start to moan and groan at that. Well, if you put it up to 75 at that point, you've overpriced for that demographic. You've not overpriced yourself because you believe you're worth the 70. Do you understand where I'm going? But the demographic that you're targeting, you've overpriced for. They'll go elsewhere. All of them will. And that's why you bring them along with you slowly. You go from 45 up to 50. £5 of a difference, not a hell of a difference. They will come some of the journey with you. While you're doing that, you're looking at building up your demographic and changing the form of your ideal customer. But you also need to change your positioning as well, because if they believe that you're overpriced, they don't believe you're worth that. They don't believe that you are that value. So therefore, your positioning is wrong. Okay, cool. Underpricing can have an effect of its own as well. So, again, we all know that somebody like a builder or an estate agent will always want you to be as cheap as they fucking possibly can, because they just want to take a piss and take advantage of it. 9 times out of 10, builders are doing it because they're putting a markup on what you do, which, okay, fine. If they're getting the customer and they want to put a markup, that's great. But they should be putting a markup on your price, not telling you what to charge and then putting a markup on that as well, because all they're doing then is they're widening their own margins. They're making a better profit for themselves. But they will always, without exception, want to have the cheapest price. However, in the eyes of a standard customer, a standard domestic customer, underpricing your service can sometimes put them off as well. So let me give you an example. If somebody goes out and they get 3 quotes, if they go out, and this is a typical scenario, isn't it? Somebody goes out, let's say they're going to do a complete kitchen refit, and they go out and they get 3 quotes, and they have you coming in as the lowest price, they have somebody coming in as the middle price, and then they have somebody coming in as the higher price. Quite often, and I'm just saying, if everything, let's forget about you having the ninja tools that you have as a toolboxer, but let's say everything else is equal. Let's say that the businesses are exactly the same. They're employing the same kind of staff. They're driving the same kind of vans. The uniforms look similar. Let's say everything else is equal, but you've got a high price, a middle price, and a lower tier price. Quite often, you will find that the customer will opt for the middle tier price. Why? Because if they are commoditizing it, which we've just done by saying everything is equal, so if they are commoditizing it and they're looking at it and going, well, these electricians are all exactly the same. The job is exactly the same. The quotes are exactly the same. The only figure that's different is the bottom line, what I'm going to pay. What they will do is they will look at it and they'll go, right, so I'm not going to pay the expensive price, because why would I pay more than I need to have the job done if I'm going to get the job done? So he must be making more profit. So I'm going to go with the middle guy. Why do I not go with the lower guy? Because my gut feeling tells me that he's missing out something. He's too cheap to do this right. And he's going to come back to me and he's going to want extras and he's going to do this. What's he missing? What's going on? And that's how customers' minds work. And you probably go through the same process yourself when you're purchasing something as well. How many times have you gone online to look at something that was that you were going to buy, whether it's a training course or whatever, and you're given 3 choices. You've got the lower option, you've got the middle option, and you've got the top option. It's designed that way intentionally. It's done that way intentionally because most marketers, most salespeople will know that people will opt for the middle tier. So they make the cheap one appear too cheap, not worth the value, and they make the expensive one appear more expensive than the value, so that you will opt for the one that they want you to opt for, which is the middle tier. Psychology of marketing. But the unfortunate thing about that is it translates over into true life. And how many times have you yourself, whether it was a tradesman or anything else, or a holiday or whatever, and you've looked at it and thought, it's too cheap, there's something not right, and you'll go with a different option. Happens. So you can underprice yourself as well. And there's a truth that you need to be aware of also, and this is in the main, and I'm excluding from this, as I said, builders and letting agents, landlords and the like. But in the main, customers, domestic customers in particular, because it's their home and it's their pride and joy and it's their family and everything, they are really purchasing on value and not on price. And if they can see the value in what they're getting, if they understand and appreciate the value of what it is that they're actually getting, then they'll be prepared to pay the price. It's when they don't understand the value, when they don't appreciate the value, or when they commoditize. Now, you've heard me talking about commodity, and we're going to talk a bit more about that in a second. In fact, I'll leave it until we do talk about it. So don't overprice and don't underprice. Always be checking where you are as far as your positioning is concerned, and as far as the selection of your ideal customer is concerned, your audience is concerned. And when you start to push up your pricing, push it up until you bounce off the ceiling, push it up until you hit resistance. And when you hit resistance, go back and look at things. Start looking. And again, for me, the measure is going to be 7 out of 10. For you, it could be a different number, but I would look at 7 out of 10. If I'm winning 7 out of 10, I'm happy. I'm meeting a little bit of resistance, but not enough to be concerned about. You go a little bit higher and you start meeting more resistance, and you start hitting sort of 6 out of 10, 5 out of 10. At that point, then I'm thinking to myself, something's got to change. I've got to change my audience, or I've got to work on my positioning so that people see that I am worth that I give that amount of value. Okay, cool. So I said I'm not going to go through teaching you how to actually set your price. You have within the toolbox a calculator that helps you to do that. So go and search out the minimum charge calculator that will help you to do that. But what you got to do, which many people forget about, is you've got to genuinely work out the actual working days in your business. Now, the slide on screen at the moment is just again, it's a guide. It's not exactly how it should be, because your business is going to be completely different to my business or to anybody else's business. And you may want to include other things or exclude other things. Or you might decide that you're only working a 4-hour day or a 5-hour day rather than a 6 or an 8-hour day. So all of these figures need to be considered when you're working out your minimum charge. But unfortunately, what some people do is when they start working out their pricing before they're introduced to something like the minimum charge calculator, what they would do is look at the year as a whole and think to themselves that I need to be earning X in a month, so that I'll break that down. I need to be earning X in an hour or X in a day, and then they work out their figure that way. And it's wrong, because they haven't taken into consideration the fact that they don't need to be or shouldn't be working weekends, certainly not every weekend. I appreciate that some weekends you will want to work because it fits in with your customers' plans and everything, so I get that. But you shouldn't also be working your bank holidays. They're there for a reason, for you to have rest and recuperation. You should also factor in holiday time, because when you're out on holidays, you're not freaking well earning. But how many times have people set up in business, started working out what they're charging, realize that now they can't take a freaking holiday because if they're not earning the money, they're not paying the bills. So they haven't factored in holiday time. And then also, even though you're never going to be sick, you need to also factor in sick time as well. And isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing how when people are self-employed, they rarely have sick days, and yet when people are employed, they have excuses and find time to be sick. Look, the bottom line is, what I'm trying to get across here is, you need to work out the number of days in the year that you are planning to actually work. And those are the only numbers that need to factor into when you go to your minimum charge calculator as far as the days that you are working. making sure that you've allowed time for weekends, bank holidays, and sick days. And it's going to average out somewhere around the, if you're working on the standard working practices, it's going to work out around 222, 223 days, thereabouts. I think actually in one of the trainings in the toolbox, there was a typo or a misspeak where I think I said something like 253 or something. I can't remember. But the bottom line is, these figures will be changed based on how you want to run your business, and that's what you need to look at. So set your prices. Make sure that you factor in the time off that you're going to have. Make sure that you're not overpricing. Make sure that you're not underpricing. So we've already talked a little bit about the next subject, which is positioning yourself, which is the third step. Once you set your prices, you need to put time and effort into actually positioning you as being worth that money. Now, we talk about, in terms of marketing, advertising, position you in the local area as an expert. That's fine. That's to make you visible. That's to make you the person that people want to come to. That's put your name on the tip of their tongue. But what sits alongside of that is positioning you as being worth what you are charging. And that comes about by making sure that your customer is not commoditizing you. Now, here we go. We've heard the term before, but what do I mean by a commodity? And some of you will have heard me talk about this when I do some of the live events. A commodity is a bag of sugar, right? If we take a bag of sugar or a bag of salt or a drum of salt, that's a commodity. No matter what way you look at that, no matter what way you deal with that, it is a very simple product, and there's many of them out there in the world. It's a very simple product, grains of sugar that you will use for either putting in your tea, sprinkling on your cereal, whatever it is that you do it with. However, if you walk into a supermarket, there will be a number of different brands of sugar, and you'll have, let's say, the Irish brand Shukra. I don't even know what's another brand. Tate and Lyle, I think that's tea. But anyway, so you've got two different brands of sugar. Let's call the other brand Tesco's own brand. There are other brands available. So you've got Tesco's own brand in this hand, and you've got the Irish Shukra brand in this hand. The Tesco's own brand is going to cost you 50p, and the Irish brand is going to cost you £1. Now, they're both a bag of sugar, same weight, same contents. Why in God's name am I going to pay £1 for this bag of sugar and not 50p for this? Well, the truth is, I'm not even going to look at the one that's £1. I'm going to go for the 50p one because it is a commodity. It's sugar. It's going to do the same job. It's from the same substance. It's just in a different packaging. Okay. And this is what your customers are doing with you in your local community. That's what they're doing with you. They're looking at all of the electricians in your local area, and as far as they're concerned, it's a commodity. So when they go out and get a quote, and this is why positioning is so freaking important. So when they go out and get a quote, and they get 3 different people to come and do a quote for them, if those quotes, if everything else looks equal, and in the customer's mind it does. Why? Because nobody is bothering to position themselves, so the customer only knows what's put in front of them. And if somebody turns up and smiles nicely and shakes their hand the right way and all of that, doesn't matter how crap an electrician they are, they're going to get the job. Okay? If their quote is lower, not necessarily the lowest, but lower than your one, then they're more likely to get the job. Why? Because your customer's looking at it and going, it's a commodity. There's no difference. An electrician is an electrician. Those sockets that I'm having put on the wall, he can do it or he can do it. It doesn't matter. So you need to stand out. It's what I call putting your head above the parapet. You need to stand out in your local community. And I've been saying this for years, and it is still true, because nobody else in your fucking area is doing it. Even now, people are not pushing themselves forward as the electrician in their local community. Some toolboxes are doing it. That's great, and that's what I expect, and that's what I hope. But if you look around you in your local community, you may have 12, 13 other electricians in your local community. Some of them you will know because you've bumped into them in the wholesalers, and you know and understand how they work and what they're doing and how they're running their business and how they're marketing themselves. You'll see them as competitors, and that, by the way, you shouldn't do, but that's not the topic of today. You'll see them as competitors, and you'll be probably monitoring some of the stuff that they'll be doing. There's other electricians out there that you don't even know freaking exist in your local community. And you know what? Neither do your customers know that they exist, and that's a good thing for you. But think about some of the actions and some of the things that you could do, tiny little things that you could do that would put you head and shoulders above anybody else in your local community. And it doesn't take a huge amount of stuff to do. Unfortunately, people don't do it because they're too busy wrapped up in the business of trying to earn a living, trying to scrape a living by undercharging, by not valuing themselves, by not targeting the right kind of customers, by not positioning their business. And they think that I haven't got time to actually go out and try and position myself properly. Whereas if they just position themselves properly, they would be earning more and working less, which is a much better way to be. So what do you need to do to change from being a commodity? You need to position yourself as an expert. And some of the stuff that you need to be doing is very, very simple and very basic stuff. You know, the very fact that you actually do use and create videos, having video, whether it's on a YouTube channel, and you should have a YouTube channel, or whether you're placing videos on your website, and you should have a welcome, at least a welcome video where you, yes, you personally show up and greet your customers and thank them for visiting your webpage. All of these things position you and show the customer who and what you are, and start to create this value about who you are. Also, you should have a social media presence, and on that social media presence, whether we're talking about Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, on that you should take opportunities to show your expertise. Now, in this particular presentation this morning, we're talking about your pricing and your positioning. We're not talking about your marketing. So although it forms part of your marketing, don't confuse what I'm saying today with the advice that I give you about making sure that all of your posts are not business related. There are times when you have to post business related stuff on your site. The point is that when you do post the business related stuff on your site, make sure it is stuff that your ideal customer is interested in, concerned about, or has had questions about. That way, it attracts the ideal customer to your business, and it demonstrates your expertise and the fact that you understand and you get them. So please don't think I'm now saying, because I'm not changing, I'm not saying now you're going to put all business posts on your social media. No, social media is still social, and we talk about, when we do this, we talk about a 3-to-1 ratio where you should be doing a non-business related posts as well as business related posts. But when you're doing the business ones, make sure you're not just posting stuff for the sake of posting it, or copying stuff that other people are posting because you think, oh, they got a good result out of that. Consider your own ideal customer and the questions that your customer is asking and the things that are of concern and of interest to your customer, and post about those. Hopefully that's making sense, guys. Can you just give me some thumbs, hearts, and smiley faces if that is making sense to you? We are talking about pricing here, so I'm not going to go down into too much detail on all of these issues. Safe to say that we cover off all of this inside of the toolbox. You know, if you look at the type of things that we do inside the toolbox, the type of training that's available to you inside the toolbox, that will help to position you as an expert in your local community. You know, your website and your blog attached to your website is definitely a must. Creating email newsletters, whether you're actually doing whether you're doing these weekly, fortnightly, monthly, that will depend on your customer, and it will depend on you as well. And, you know, how much information have you got to give? But you should have things that you can give them with regular touches. Now, one of the other things that I've sort of branched off from that is not just doing the email newsletters, but doing regular normal newsletters as well. And please don't mistake an email newsletter as being something swish and designed that you have to have with, columns and letter heading and all that kind of thing. That's not what we mean by email newsletters. Those of you who have been through the whole process of Aweber and the hints and tips section, what we call the generic emails, that in essence is your email newsletter. It's regular touches that you're making with your customer that are of interest to him. I'm not talking about a contrived newsletter in terms of email that looks like it's got a newsletter header and photographs here and columns there and all of that's perception of how people see a newsletter. If you go for the offline newsletter, then definitely, because you've got to make it visually appealing. But in terms of email, it's about the regular updates and the regular hints and tips that you're going to be providing. And the idea of that is not just selling, it is providing them with advice. It is providing them with hints and tips. Why? Because that positions you as an expert. That is you providing more value to your customers. Therefore, when it comes to you announcing your fee or your prices or your charging, they're more receptive to it because they know the value that you're actually providing. Very same thing with social media, same thing with help sheets. Again, guys, when I introduced the concept of help sheets and we started creating the help sheets, this was quite a bit of a game changer for me as far as the business was concerned, because many people end up in these toe-to-toe situations with a customer where you're trying to explain something that you've just told them is going to cost them money. Whether it was the phenomenon of green goo and they were thinking, oh, it's only washing up liquid down the pipes or something that the other electrician did. Yeah, and they don't understand it. They don't understand what's actually happening. And you're trying to explain it to them, or whether it's why they required earth bonding or the bonding needed to be upgraded, or why they needed to have back in the day an RCD installed. Trying to explain this to customers who didn't understand electricity and didn't understand the concepts. When you're standing toe to toe, it's very difficult to get that across. And it's also sounds in some cases like you're trying to convince them and you're trying to persuade them and you're trying to push them. Whereas with a help sheet, when you've actually taken time to sit down and write this in a way that expresses it in plain English without any technical jargon, and it gives them the reasons why it needs to be done, where it fits in as far as maybe legislation or rules or regulations are concerned, and the benefits of actually doing it. And when you can encompass that all in a help sheet and you can hand that to somebody and it saves that toe-to-toe argument and them getting suspicious and thinking you're trying it on, it adds value to what you actually do. And they see the value in that, and they see the value rather than the guy who comes along, climbs down the ladder and goes, "Look, I can't put that up, love. It's got no earth there. So, I'm either going to have to charge you an extra £200 to rewire that lighting circuit, or you're going to have to change the light fitting." And people feel like they're having a gun held to their head. Whereas when you can actually show them a help sheet, hand them a piece of paper that they can sit down and read and it describes it to them, or direct them to a PDF on your website where it's got that, that adds value. Public speaking, something that elevates you beyond belief. Now, I'm going to tie in public speaking and videos into the same thing, because people see you on video expressing yourself, exchanging ideas, teaching and showing stuff. That elevates your position in your local community. But it even elevates it more if you can attend networking events and stand up and speak with confidence. If you can arrange speaking events, and we talk about this inside the toolbox. I'm not going to go into a whole pile of detail here, but yes, it's within your remit. I know we've got COVID and everything at the moment, but it's also within your remit when all this is over, and we'll be back to normal in the spring, to actually organize events where you actually deliver a presentation. Whether that, there's various different things you can do here, whether it's talking about safety in the home, whether it's delivering information to landlords or letting agents, whether it's turning up at housing events, whether it's taking a speaking slot at the Women's Institute, taking a speaking slot at the Sally Army, wherever you can get an opportunity to speak. The very fact that you are there presenting yourself and expressing your views, your opinions, your information, your expertise will position you also and adds value to who you are. It adds value to your pricing. Trust me.